Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Amber Rose, also known as the Religious Hippie. You can basically follow me on any social media platform, or you can go straight to my website at thereligioushippie.com. So, today is another help segment, and I wanted to go live because I also wanted to announce that the Sacred Heart limited edition stoneware mugs are officially live on my donation center. You can go there at thereligioushippie.com and click on the donation center tab, and you'll be taken right there and you'll see them. Yes, I do have iced coffee in here. No, that is not a crime. It's perfect for keeping, your drinks warm, hot, or cold. I don't discriminate here. But you guys know that I am a huge fan of iced coffee, so obviously I put iced coffee in my mugs. That's not weird. You know what? Don't judge me. It's delicious. So anyways, I'm shaking a whole lot because I already had like so much coffee today, but we're gonna ignore that and we're gonna move on. So I hope you guys are all doing well. It's a beautiful day here, kind of a little bit humid actually. I was surprised because I was like, oh, yesterday it was so nice and it was so cold yesterday. And now today we're back up into like the 90s. So what a fun time. But I wanted to tell you guys about the mugs because they are very, very limited. We were only able to get a certain amount, and I wanted to make sure that the people who wanted them could get them, of course. But, with the ministry and money being tight and stuff like that, I'm still, trying to get merch out to you guys while also, being able to help the ministry get some money as well, some revenue, so that we can keep this going, especially when things are so difficult with family. But then also, there's just some big life changes going on. So, just, every little bit truly helps. So, I do really, really appreciate it. But today is another help segment. So, that's what we're talking about. We're going to just kind of jump right in here. Let's see here. Okay, so this is episode 13. It's so crazy that we've already done 13 episodes of this. And I have three specific ones we're going to go over today. I'm finally catching up on my help emails. So if you guys want to be on the help segment, you can email me and put help in the segment in like the subject line so that I know it's for this. And please specify whether or not you would like to be anonymous or you don't want to be anonymous, just so I know, because sometimes people want to be anonymous, but they say their name and then they don't tell me. It's not that it's really happened before, but sometimes they follow up with an email and they're just like, "Actually, can I be anonymous?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, go ahead." But you have to tell me. You have to tell me you want to be anonymous. Otherwise, I won't know. So, okay, let's get started. And then after all of this, we'll do like a little mini Q&A. It'll be really fun. We also have some painters doing some work up here, so if you guys hear noises, I, I don't know. I don't know. We're going to have to deal with that as it comes. Okay, so thank you for your great content. You're welcome. I'm reaching out to you to help me with a sort of painful feeling about my relationship with my brother. We both grew up in the faith but drifted away from it, and since drinking the woke Kool Aid, he has become anti-religious. We also drifted apart over the years, and I feel I lost my brother. I find his comments about religion on Facebook biting in a way that the same comment from a stranger isn't. I'm sad my niece won't grow up with the faith that sustained our family for generations. It's weird how much this affects me. Let me know what you think. Okay, first of all, totally understand. Thank you for writing in. I completely understand. And it's so difficult when people we love fall away from the faith. And a lot of the times it's because they've been hurt in some way, and they blame God for that, or they blame, like, oh, well, if religion's so great, then it should have saved my mom from dying, or God could have, but he didn't do anything. And, there's so many interesting ways that people fall away from the faith. So it can be really difficult, and it's really sad when a family member falls away from the faith and you want to help them. You want them to see the truth. You want them to understand how amazing Jesus is and how amazing the Catholic faith is, especially if they were raised in it for their whole life. And to get these anti Catholic hate comments from someone who you're related to is even a bigger blow. So, I would say if it's really affecting your own faith life, if it's really affecting the way that you are able to live out your faith, to distance yourself love them at a distance. If it means muting him on Facebook and not seeing any of his comments, you don't have to block him. I think that's a little extreme, obviously, but you can mute him so you don't have to see his comments. Totally fine. I would also highly, highly suggest that you pray and sacrifice for his family and him. Pray for their conversion. Prayer is really powerful, and a lot of people undersell how important prayer is. It's actually very, very important because we never know how God is working in that person's life or how God is using us to work in that person's life. So I think that that's really, really important is prayer and sacrifice. Main thing you should be doing for them. Besides that, I would highly suggest leaving the door open if for some reason he comes around and he's like, you know, I'm actually kind of interested. Could we go to mass together? You can even offer, be like, hey, do you want to come to mass with me or something? And leaving that door open and knowing enough about your faith so that you can defeat his arguments as well. Now, sometimes there are going to be people, I don't know if your brother is like this, but they kind of have the straw man arguments. They just don't want to lose the argument. So they're not interested in actually having to learn anything about what you're talking about. They're more or less just interested in talking at you, proving their point. There's no real conversation that can be had with people like that, which is why you kind of have to leave them, at a distance, love them at a distance. You can also evangelize through your own life, be the gospel. One of my friends, Maya, oh, my phone's on here. She made a reel today that was just really interesting. And she said, I can't I can't remember it word for word, but basically like make sure you're living out the gospel in your everyday life because you might be the only Bible that people read. Like what? Um and I'll find her Instagram real quick so that you guys can follow her because she's really cute and she's awesome. Um Let me see. Where is she? I swear sometimes it doesn't really work. Or is it Mia? Maya or Mia? Okay, well I'll link her later when I find it. But the main thing is that sometimes we have to evangelize through our own lives to our family, to our friends and set the example and show them a love that they're not going to get anywhere else, and that's the love of Christ. So, it's definitely very very sad that your niece is not going to be raised in the faith. And it's a disservice to her if she's not raised to love God. I mean, that's a terrible thing for a child is to never know the love of God. Um, I will say though that if it's, you know, you said here it's weird how much this affects me. I would say if it's really affecting you that badly, I would definitely suggest practicing the art of detachment. I say this because technically that's not your family. Yes, your brother is your family, and that's really important. And obviously, do all the things that I suggested beforehand. But there's nothing you can really do outside of those things. You can't force him to be Catholic. You can't kidnap his niece and your niece and take her to church and baptize her. Like you can't do those things. So we do have to practice detachment where you offer it up to God and you pray for them and you say, Lord, I don't know what they need, but you do help me to be the person, that they need in their life to show them Christ. Um, those types of things are really important. And we can't always change the way that things are, but we never know like the extent of God's mercy or what he will do in their lives. And so I think it's so important that we don't give up hope, that we continue praying and fasting and doing penances and sacrifices for people just like this in general. Maybe you know somebody like this in your life. They're not your brother, but maybe they're a best friend, a cousin, an aunt, an uncle, a grandma, a mother, whoever it might be. And, this still applies. Maybe you can't have a conversation with them, but you can live out the gospel in your everyday life and evangelize to them in that way. Um, and so I would highly suggest, again, if it's stealing your peace, you can mute him on social media. I don't know how often you guys see each other. I don't know if you guys see each other at family reunions. But I would highly suggest, not necessarily like if you're up to it and he says something that's anti-Catholic, like the case term Catholics worship Mary or whatever you want to say. You can just ask him questions. Be like, oh, could you tell me where that is in the Catechism of the Catholic Church? Or, can you tell me who compiled the Bible? Things like this, I don't think you necessarily have to have like an apologist type conversation with them where you're just like pointing out every single flaw in their argument. I do believe that a lot of the times you can get really far with people by simply just making them think about what they're asking you or what they're telling you. By simply just saying like, "Where did you get that information from?" Most of the time, it's really, really sketchy sources or sources that are not Catholic. And it's like, well, you wouldn't go to Texas Roadhouse for sushi. So why are you going to a Protestant website to learn about Catholicism? You know what I mean? So I suggest that. I hope it does get better. And I'm so sorry you have to go through that, especially with family. It's so difficult. But I definitely think that it's worth it. It truly is worth it to keep that door open and protect your peace, love them at a distance, prayer, sacrifice, and your heart's in the right place. And we just have to keep praying for people like your brother, 100%. So our second, hang on, coffee break. That's the stuff. Okay, our second help email of the day. Love your channel. Your channel and your work has had so much to do with me coming back to the church. I can't thank you enough. You are very welcome. Honestly, it's all God. I am simply a tool in his hands, but I do really, really appreciate that. My question has to do with relationships. How do I tell my boyfriend about the sexual abuse I dealt with as a kid and the porn addiction that followed? My mother got really into a show called Shameless. She wanted me to watch it with her. I thought that it was gross, all the nudity and sex scenes. However, she kept nagging me over and over again and would tease me for not wanting to watch that. So I eventually gave into it and watched it. Mind you, I was 10 at the time. Eventually, I started to watch porn on my own, and it became an addiction. I stopped watching it 4 years ago when I was 15. Shortly after my 16th birthday, I came back to the church. This was almost 3 years ago. Congratulations, welcome home. I have come a long way um, in a relationship with. Hang on. I'm sorry, I don't understand that part. I'm so sorry. um, you still find yourself struggling to trust God and to deal with the shame of my past. Okay. I met my now boyfriend at a Bible study. We have been dating 2 months now, and I don't know when or how to tell him about this. He wants to wait till marriage, as do I. He keeps talking about purity of mind and body and how he's so happy he found a girl that has both. I hope you can. I hope you can help. Thank you in advance. Yeah, I mean, okay, first of all, I just want to commend you for being so young and for overcoming something that is so difficult and so saturated in today's culture. I mean, there are people my age, and I'm not old by any means, but 20 plus year olds who wished they had the willpower that you had at 15. Like, seriously. That is just a huge accomplishment. You should be really proud of yourself. It's a huge issue these days. And 100%, I think that you are on the right track, and to have just the willpower and the determination to overcome that is just really inspiring. So congratulations, that's huge. Second of all, honestly, I find these days, especially in the dating culture, right? It's almost impossible to find somebody who hasn't had a run in with pornography as an addiction, or they've just seen it, or they've had some sort of experience with it. It's so saturated, like I mentioned in today's culture earlier, that you can't escape it, really. And it's almost impossible to find someone who has not been exposed to it, like at all. So, because of that, if your boyfriend thinks that I don't know for sure, but if he thinks that he can find somebody who's never been exposed to pornography, that is like he's never going to find a spouse. Like if that's what he wants, like if that's a want for him, he's never going to find a spouse, because honestly, it's going to be very slim pickings. And even then, the people who say they've never been exposed to it are probably lying because it's so saturated today. So you basically literally have to be under a rock. You have to be Patrick Starr in order to avoid it these days, which is so upsetting. And especially if you're on Twitter like I am these days, it's commented under almost every single one of my posts. And I'm not talking about like ads for pornography or anything like that or links to like Pornhub. No, I'm talking about like full on nudity pictures in my comments. And it's not people, it's bots. And Elon Musk still hasn't done anything about it. So okay. But anyways, I know some time has passed since you sent this email, so please feel free to email me again and let me know how things go. But I know that this is a very common situation, so I'm still going to, of course, address it. Um, so my thing is that he should be commending you, right? I don't know if you've told him yet, obviously, but he should be commending you for healing from your porn addiction because that is so difficult. And a lot of people don't want to talk about the fact that women struggle with it, but we do. Okay. That's just, they're like, oh, women can't get it. Oh, yes, they can. Yes, we can. So it is so important that he is supportive of these milestones. And the fact that it happened 4 years ago and you're constantly working on yourself and not giving into temptation, those types of things, that is amazing. Like, that's so important. So if he's not commending you and he's more like, ooh, like he changes the way he views you after you tell him, that's a red flag. Like, that is a red flag. Um, he should really be in awe about what you've overcome because so many people struggle with it and struggle to overcome that, and it's not an easy one. So I would say go to him, sit him down, and have a hard conversation. And those aren't easy, but being like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about my past because it's something that I feel like you should know. And it's something that has been weighing on my heart. And I just think it's fair if you knew about this. And then just telling him from start to finish. And you can also say, like, please wait until like I finish, to say anything so that you can really get out what you want to get out and he doesn't interrupt you a whole lot. Um, and, you know, after that, he might be afraid you'll relapse or something of that nature. But if you've been clean for this long and you're constantly fighting the good fight and stuff, you're going to keep fighting against the temptations. And he should be supportive, of this journey. And if he is supportive, then he's a keeper. But if he isn't, then you dodged a huge bullet. So I would highly suggest you're going to have to just bite the bullet and sit down with him and you're going to have to get it out there because it is important for him to know. It is important for people to know about your past, especially if that is someone you plan on marrying. These are hard conversations you're going to have, and you're really young. So I wouldn't say, like, oh, like this time is of the essence, like you have to do it like right now. But I would say that it is really important, especially if you love him and you want to get this off your chest. It would be really good to be able to tell him about it because then you can also, it'll either deepen the bond you guys already have and strengthen your trust and your foundation, or it won't. Either way, you'll know, and that's good. It's good to know. And there were so many situations in my life where I didn't bite the bullet. I was like, no, like, it'll come out eventually, like, we'll talk about it soon or whatever. Never talked about it, ended up being a huge issue, and it just caused a lot of resentment, it caused a lot of fights, and obviously, I'm not saying that's gonna be you guys or anything like that, but I am saying I don't think that the people I dated was necessarily wasting my time, except for one, because I learned a lot of lessons along the way. But so I wouldn't say like, "Oh, I wasted my time dating these people," but you also don't wanna waste your time dating people that aren't right for you or stay in a relationship that's not good for you, if that makes sense. So, if he has a hard time accepting this, that this is a part of your past, it's not a part of your present or future, if he can't love you for what you went through, he's not going to be able to love you for what you're going to go through in the future. And that's really important. And it comes with maturity. And some guys, just aren't mature enough for that at the moment. Some girls aren't mature enough for that at the moment. And that's something you're going to have to discern and work out. But I don't want to scare you away from this conversation because I think it's a really important conversation to have with your boyfriend. So I would definitely say sit him down, have a conversation about it, do your best to, just explain to him what happened and how you overcame it and all of that stuff. And he should appreciate that. He should really appreciate that you trust him enough to tell him that. And he should really appreciate how far you've come in your healing journey from that addiction. I don't think that's something you should be afraid of telling him. I was super afraid to tell Max some stuff, and then finally I just bit the bullet and I did, and it turns out we had the same view on so many things that I was just like, why was I ever afraid? And I guess it was because I really liked him. But there were other times where I was like, "Oh, I need to tell this person this," and then I would, and then they reacted very poorly, huge red flags, and I was like, "Oh." I'm like, "Well, at least I know now, because then it led me to Max, who I'm getting married to." So, in the end, it ended up working out. So either way, just know that God is in control. You you are young and you're strong. And I don't think that he's going to react badly. I think if he truly loves you, he's going to react really well to this. Um, and I just think that's something you'll have to kind of sit down and discuss with him, but definitely worth it, 100%. But again, congratulations in coming back to the faith. I know it's been 3 years, but who cares? And also, congratulations for beating an addiction that's so hard to beat. Truly, truly. So we're praying for you, and I hope that it does go well. I don't need any more coffee, but here I am taking more drinks of coffee. And yes, it is iced. I can't really show you guys the ice cubes anymore. They kind of melted. Wait. Can you guys see? Eh, not really. I can't really show you guys without spilling it everywhere, so you'll have to take my word for it. All right. Our last email for today. Ba-ba-bum. Okay. Hi, Amber. I'd like to remain anonymous. I am a 19-year-old Catholic male and I need some dating advice. I recently asked a girl out, but she told me she's on a dating fast till August. I told her I would be willing to wait for her and we have a lot in common, and she's honestly like my best friend. Right now, I'm working full time and my plan is to save money and start a family as family soon at a young age, under the guidance of a spiritual director. Sorry, guys. But I've recently felt a call to go study since I'm in to go study Catholic theology somewhere. It is unfortunate, however, as all the Catholic colleges are far away since I'm in Nebraska. So my conflict is this. I want to wait for this girl, but I also feel called to study theology. I think I should go study theology, but I don't want to miss out on possibly marrying someone I consider to be my best friend. What are your thoughts? So, oh, this is always so tricky. But something I wanna know is I wanna know what her response was after you told her you would wait for her, because that really determines everything. And the reason I say that is because a lot of women, and I do not condone this at all, but a lot of women, especially if she's your best friend, will say like, "Oh, I'm on a dating fast," to avoid dating you because she doesn't wanna turn you down and ruin the friendship, but at the same time, she doesn't wanna date you. That happens so often. So I would like to know what her response was to you saying like, "Oh, I'll wait for you." Because if it was like, "Okay, great. Like I'll be done in like 3 months. Like this is going to be so good." Or if it was just like, "Oh, when are you leaving?" There are some major signs, but sometimes women are really 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 bad at just cutting it off and being like, "Hey, I'm just not that interested." So, ladies, if you're out there, just be direct with men, please. It doesn't matter. Like, if it ruins the friendship, oh well. Like, I'm sorry, but you have to be honest with guys because stringing them along is not okay. Now, let's say that she's authentic about this and she's just on the dating fast and she wants to finish it. First of all, I'm like, well, if she actually wanted to date you, why isn't she putting an end to her dating fast? Because usually women go on dating fasts and once God sends them somebody who they're like, "Ooh, actually he's kinda cute and he asked me out," and they're still in their dating fast, if they actually wanna go out with them, they'll stop their dating fast to go out with them. A dating fast is not a hard and fast rule. Fast rule. It's not like you're making a huge promise to God that you're not gonna date anybody for 6 months. Usually what it is it's just like, "I'm not looking for anybody right now actively," I'm not actively looking to date anybody, but, if somebody came along, I'm not gonna deny them necessarily. That's how a lot of girls view dating fasts, right? They're just not actively looking for a boyfriend. So, I would say those 2 things are my main concern, is it's like, what was her response? And then if she actually did wanna date you, why didn't she cancel her dating fast to do so? Especially if you've talked to her about wanting to, study theology somewhere, right? So, also, why is she doing the dating fast? That's also really important information. Is it because she just broke up with somebody? Is it because she hasn't found anybody yet? Those things are also really important. And if you guys are considered best friends, that's also really, really tricky because usually you're a best friend for a reason. I don't mean to be harsh or blunt, that's just the truth. Usually, if girls want to date their best friend, it's very obvious. So, that's kind of my thoughts on that whole area there. There's just as a woman knowing how women work and what I've done in the past as well. I've definitely used that when I was a teenager where I was just like, "Oh, actually, like I'm on a dating fast." Ooh, you know what I mean? So, everybody's a little bit different. I don't know the situation because I don't have all of the information when it comes to this. Um but I would definitely say, you have to have a conversation with her about this. And it needs to be a serious conversation. Like, you have to be serious about wanting to date her, and you have to ask her to be honest with you, like, genuinely honest. Like, if you don't want to date me, please tell me. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. And maybe she will hurt your feelings, but just tell her you won't so that she'll actually be honest with you. Whatever. I think as men, I'm not saying this is you, but I'm just saying as men in general, men are really bad at being rejected, and, um, a lot of them are at least. I know some who are really, really good at it. Like, you just say, "Oh, no, thank you, I'm not interested," and they're just like, "Okay, well, it was really nice meeting you, like, see you around." Some guys are really good at it, other guys aren't, especially if you have history with them. And I definitely think that when it comes down to it, you have to have a really hard conversation with her and talk to her about stuff. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, pursue things while you're single. I think it's so helpful to pursue things when you're not tied down to somebody. Because if you guys are going to start a long distance relationship, that's gonna be really difficult. I'm not saying it can't happen. Some of my closest friends. Do I have marker on my hand? Some of my closest friends have gotten married from long distance relationships, and they're so happy, and I'm so happy for them, but it's very, very difficult. It's something you guys both have to want, and it's something that you guys have to work towards. It's not impossible, but communication is needed. And I think going out of Nebraska and going to a Catholic college to study theology would be a great opportunity for you to meet other people. Not just that, but also to pursue what you're actually interested in. You're 19, so you're young. I'm not saying like, oh, you're that young, where it's like, oh, don't think about having a family yet. Like, no, absolutely start think about having a family. Um, but you also have to keep in mind that if you have this calling to go study theology at a college somewhere, then maybe this girl might not be your future wife, because we can't have those expectations and be like, oh, she is going to be my future wife because she's my best friend or this or that. I'm not saying you are, but that's just the truth of it, right? There might be a girl who is better fit for you at this college you might go to later. You never know what God's plan is for you. I highly suggest you go to adoration. I highly suggest you ask Saint Anne for her intercession. Pray the Saint Anne novena, and get some clarity on that, because honestly, at the end of the day, prayer is going to really help you in this area make a good decision. But you know, when you're single, you're able to have a lot more freedom in the sense of going places, pursuing things. Maybe you're called to the priesthood, maybe not, but this is the time to go and explore and to pursue those types of endeavors. Because if you have a girlfriend back home in Nebraska and you're traveling and stuff, that's really tricky, And for however long you're going to be studying theology, is she going to be willing to move out to you? Is she going to college? What does that look like? So, everything's really, really difficult, and I don't have a whole lot of information, but that's just some food for thought. And again, I do not at all mean to be, mean or any of that, but I think with guys, as a woman, I have to be blunt and I have to be straightforward with you. Some women will genuinely be like, "Oh, I'm on a dating fast," but they really just don't want to date you. And it's sad, and it's upsetting that they're not going to be direct with you, but you really do have to have a conversation with her and be like, "Hey, I really want to date you and have a family with you, but these are my dreams, and I want to make sure that if we date, we make this work, and if you don't want to date, tell me." And it's really difficult as well because I mean, I'm going to get so much flack for this, but guys and girls can't be just friends. I know. I have a brother, we're not related, but we've been really, really close for years and years, and, we never had romantic feelings for each other or anything like that, but I still set up boundaries, and you just cannot you just can't be in a friendship with somebody and hang out with them constantly and talk to them constantly and not catch feelings for them, right? Um, some people are going to be like, well, I'm the exception. It's like, okay, there's going to be some exceptions, but for the most part, there's always going to be someone, right, who falls for the other. There's always going to be in that situation. And it's also, I want to say this too, it's also so disrespectful and kind of a red flag to a good Catholic partner who might be interested in marrying you. Whether it's a guy who has a girl best friend, that is like that's a red flag, or it's a girl who has a guy best friend. That's a red flag too. Because how disrespectful is it to your spouse to be texting another guy all day, every day, type of thing? It's like, oh, he's just a friend. Like, no, if you truly loved your spouse, you would set boundaries with this friend. And now there are controlling people who it's just like, you can't have any friends or this or that. Or, for me, it's like if I wanted to hang out with one of my guy friends and I don't talk to any of them. But if like they're in town and they text me like, "Hey, I'm in town. Do you and Max want to go get drinks? Do you and Max want to blah blah blah?" You know what I mean? And that is the appropriate way to go about it is to always include the significant other. That's not being insecure, that's called respect. And to be respectful of the person you're dating is so important. And I think a lot of the times women kind of just are like, it's not a huge deal. Like, I'm going to go get coffee and go to my best friend's house and we're going to watch a movie and like just hang out and my boyfriend can deal with it. It's like, how disrespectful is that? That's not a woman you want to marry? So I definitely think that it's important to, you know, um, make sure that you're setting boundaries with friends of the opposite sex and that in general I think that in high school, middle school, etc., having best friends of the opposite sex, obviously you can have friends of the opposite sex but just don't hang out with them one on one, those types of things. But I think that's so immature and it's so juvenile because we have that in high school and we have that in middle school, but if you're in college, and keep in mind even like the tail end of high school, like sophomore, but junior maybe, but definitely senior, and then from past that college, it's like if you have somebody like that, it's like you got to set boundaries because you're never going to find a good healthy spouse and also keep a best friend of the opposite sex, right? So you have to really decide that. And it's difficult, but at the same time, you're also gonna help your best friend or your other friend find a spouse too, because then you're not hindering them. You know what I mean? Like, you're not the best friend, but, "Oh, she's dating someone, so it's not a big deal, like, she's my best friend, but, like, she has a boyfriend." It's like, have you seen girl and guy best friends, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they have a boy friend or a girlfriend. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if they do that. You see how they act in person, and it's like they're dating. You know what I mean? They're finishing each other's sentences, they know each other's favorite food, but they're just friends. It's like, no, it's not appropriate, right? If you're going to date someone, your eyes have to be on them. You can't have a best friend of the opposite sex. It doesn't work. So, again, I don't mean to be blunt. I don't mean to be rude or anything like that. This is genuinely just advice. And I think that guys need more blunt advice and straightforward advice. I think too many times people kind of tiptoe around the the truth a little bit. They try to protect guys' feelings, and I 100% like get that, but you have to understand that it's just not how the world works for everybody, right? Again, there's going to be a couple, exceptions, but even then, eventually those exceptions are going to turn into the statistic, right? So a lot of people think like, "Oh, I'm the exception, like that's not how it is for me or this or that." It's like it just depends, right? And you still have to discern, but it's not about you, it's about how it's affecting your partner, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, um you could have a best friend, right? And you could be a part of the exception. But if your partner isn't okay with it, then you have to do something about it. If it makes them uncomfortable, then they're your priority. Your best friend's not your priority. So just keep that in mind. And I just hope that, you guys figure it out and definitely have those hard conversations. And, um, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Clay. I do. Yes, because trying to protect feelings causes issues. And again, like I said, I'm going to ruffle feathers by saying this. Unfortunately, a lot of people just take things too personally. And I've said this before that it's like not everybody's going to fit into my advice. Not everybody's going to have this experience. And I forget what it's called, but it's like main character syndrome, where it's like people be like, well, that's not my experience at all. Like, that's not what I went through at all. And I'm like, okay, then it doesn't apply to you. You know what I mean? So it's like some people will get so upset about it. And it's like, well, if it doesn't apply to you, then okay, then it doesn't apply to you. It's just really interesting how all of that works. But don't have main character syndrome, guys. Don't do that. Main character syndrome is probably the most annoying thing I've ever ran into on the internet, where you make a post and it doesn't relate to one person or another person like at all, but they make it all about them and they're like, "No, that's not my situation." I'm like, "Okay, well then it doesn't apply to you. So then why this applies to people who are in this situation, not you." So, you know what I mean? Um so yeah, don't get like just ask yourself, "Does this apply to me?" No? Scroll on. All right. So, we are now going to do our little Q&A. Hopefully that helped. We're gonna let me see here. Doo-doo-doo. Let me go. Okay, so we're gonna start on doo-doo-doo. We are gonna start on YouTube real quick. Here we go. Okay, there we go. You guys can go ahead and start asking your questions on YouTube. Let me try and sorry, I'm trying to get Instagram's thingy up and running. If you guys have questions on Instagram, go ahead and put it in that little question mark chat blob over here, because it's going to get lost in the comments. So I am not going to be able to see it. So yeah, there's that. Doo-doo-doo. Okay, so let's see here. Sorry, we also still have painters here, so it's a little noisy if you can hear them. Okay, let's see here. Let me move these over here. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we're going to start the questions on YouTube. And then we'll go over to Instagram. And like I said, please, if you're on Instagram, put them in that little questionnaire box over here so that I can just click on it and I can scroll through your questions. Otherwise, they're going to get lost in the chat box. So let us begin. Okay. Okay. On addiction, you previously said any addiction means you should not be discerning marriage. Does caffeine qualify? And if not, why? So the reason why, like, if it's an issue, like for caffeine, everybody drinks caffeine, but not everybody smokes weed. Not everybody, is addicted to porn. Not everybody, etc. Everybody drinks caffeine. So to me, caffeine is not a huge deal. But let's say caffeine is a huge deal. Let's say that when you drink caffeine, you're super irritable. You have to have at least 5 Starbucks coffees and it costs you like $100 a week or something. Obviously, I'm being dramatic here. I'm over exaggerating. But let's say your caffeine addiction is causing problems, then yeah, you got to get that under control, right? You have to get that under control before you bring somebody else into your life. Because if it's causing so many issues where you're going into debt because of coffee or you're spending way too much money and you can't live without your double shot espresso cappuccino with the no fat milk something, right? Then yes, it's going to be a little bit of a problem. So you probably do want to fix that, but I don't think that caffeine qualifies, mainly because it's not one of those addictions that's usually, super bad. However, I will say if it affects your health, like you think caffeine is a meal, you think coffee's a meal. No. So fix that. You spend too much money on coffee every week. Fix that. It's causing major headaches because you have an extreme addiction to caffeine, and if you don't have caffeine, you're irritable, you can't get up, it's affecting your mental, capabilities, it's brain fog, etc. Then yeah, you got to get that fixed. But some addictions are obviously worse than others because they have worse effects. Smoking weed, of course, is one of those. Having an alcohol addiction, if you drink constant, like that's not good, right? Pornography, masturbation, all of those things. So, yeah, there's that. So yeah, I definitely think that if, you know, that's something, then yeah, 100%. Um do, 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 do. How to get back to the Catholic faith. So, if you want to come back into the faith, 100% commend that. Awesome. First thing is if you have had your sacraments, so if you've had your first communion and your confirmation and you've been baptized, then all you would really have to do is go and do confession. And I would highly suggest calling your church and doing a general confession, depending on how long you've been away for, because this really helps you kind of go through all of the sins that you've committed while being away from the faith. And it helps you to kind of, start with a clean slate and to be in a state of grace. And the priest can help you with that. So I highly suggest calling and setting up a general examination, or sorry, a general confession. And then after that, of course, go to mass, receive the sacraments regularly, continue going to confession at least every month. I suggest every 2 weeks, but monthly is fine too. And then spiritual direction's great too. Talk to a priest as much as you can. Learn about the faith. And some great resources are Ascension Presents, Catholic Answers, uh, Keith Nestor. He has a phenomenal book about coming back into the faith. I think it's like a convert's guide to Catholicism or something. He's a good friend of mine. Highly, highly suggest that. So I hope that helps. And, if you do decide to welcome home, like that's fantastic. We're rooting for you. So that's amazing. Um, Dear Amber, should I, as a man, be making money and have enough money move out before getting married? So this is going to be different for everybody. I don't think necessarily that you have to have everything figured out in order to get married. It really depends on your spouse or your girlfriend, whatever. Because some girls definitely want financial security before getting married. They definitely want to have that. And that is like a deal breaker for them if you don't have that. So I don't necessarily think so personally, mainly because Max and I have gone through this and we didn't have that. But some girls are gonna be different, so I definitely suggest that it just has to be up to the girl that you plan on getting married to, for real. For real. What? Um, let's see. If I live in a place where everybody uses some form of nicotine, is that okay? I mean, nicotine in itself isn't necessarily bad. It's nicotine itself is not what's addicting. It's the chemicals that they put in nicotine that's addicting. Um, it depends on what you mean by uses some form of nicotine. Are they all smokers? Are they all vaping? Because those are really the only two options I can think of nicotine being, unless they have patches or gum or cigars. If they aren't addicted to it, that's fine. I mean, you've guys seen my social media. Max and I have a cigar once in a while, or we talk and stuff, and we have a cigar for like celebrations. Um, but it's not like an addiction thing. We don't have it every week. We don't have it every day. Because obviously that's a lot of nicotine in one day. But I mean, it just depends, right? You have to kind of discern that. How long is too long for dating and how long is too long for being engaged before marriage? Um, okay, again, this really just depends on the person. I'm going to go, well, I mean, not always. I think if you're dating for longer than a year and you guys haven't decided if you want to get married or not yet, that's too long. Um, I think, at the end of a year, if you guys are like, yeah, I want to get married, you guys should be able to learn about each other in a year and get all of the hard conversations out of the way in a year. A year is a very long time. And then usually after that, marriage prep and all of that takes about another year. Some churches only take about 6 months, some churches take 3, some churches a week. Just depends on what your church is, that type of thing. I would say engagements shouldn't be any longer than a year. Ideally 6 months, before getting married, but a year is fine. But my thing is if you're going to be engaged any longer than a year, because usually like a year for wedding planning, okay, like that makes sense. Got to send out invites, whatever. But if you're waiting any longer than a year, at that point, why even get engaged? Why not just bite the bullet and get married, or why get engaged at all? Because the engagement's kind of meant to be a transitional period. It's not meant to be a period that you stay in for a very long time. It's just meant for you to be able to get some time to get married and to figure out all of the logistics that go along with that. And definitely enjoy the engagement process. But I would say both of them shouldn't last any longer than a year. You should know if you want to marry someone within a year. Honestly, 6 months ideally, but a year maximum, and a year to be engaged, to get married, because I do know that it takes a long time to wedding plan, and a lot of places are booked out a year. And so having a year to plan things is very helpful for a lot of couples, but it shouldn't last any longer than that, in my opinion, and actually most priests' opinions as well. So, thank you so much, Cedric. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. I've gotten pretty close to a girl and I have an addiction to porn. If I were to step back and work on my own virtues, how would I do so without being rude or seeming removed all of a sudden? Well, for starters, I mean, if I don't know what you mean by getting pretty close to a girl. Um, if you mean like, oh, you guys have been interested in dating and she's also interested in dating, or if you guys are just friends, or I'm not really sure. I would be honest with her. I think in this culture today, we really do lack good, like, we really do lack honesty and just kind of being blunt with people. And I mean, granted, a lot of people are snowflakes these days, so it makes it really difficult to be blunt and honest with them. But I will say that honesty is really important. And, being honest with her and telling her, like, you don't have to automatically tell her you're struggling with a porn addiction, but if you plan on dating her one day or something, it'd probably be good to tell her, and be like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this right now, and I really want to work on myself. And, in order to do that, I think I'm going to have to distance myself for a while. And I hope you can understand. And please pray for me, and blah, 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 blah." So I would just kind of sit down with her. And like I said earlier in this episode, we kind of went over that. uh, I commend you for wanting to get help, and that's fantastic. Go to confession, receive the sacraments. I think Andre kind of talked about those things, praying the rosary and reading the Bible, etc. So important. Those things really, really do help with addictions. But I would definitely say that you have to be honest with her, and I think she'll probably appreciate that honesty, and like I said earlier, and if she doesn't appreciate that honesty and she doesn't appreciate that healing journey you're on, it makes her view you differently, you dodged a bullet, truly. So, I highly suggest that you tell her about it, in a very loving way and like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this, and, I don't want to burden you with this, and you don't have to be rude about it at all. You just have to be honest. And honesty is not rude, it's just truth. So I definitely think you guys should do that. Okay, we only have about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to go to Instagram and answer some questions from Instagram. Do. Okay. Do, 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 do. Let's see. Okay. So, CJ, about evolution and stuff, I genuinely don't have a good grasp of understanding about it in order to actually answer your question, so I apologize for that, but if I do a little research, I can kind of pick it out. I do know that a Catholic, what was it? A Catholic he came up with the Big Bang theory, but a lot of people just kind of twist that. So, I don't have a lot of information to be able to answer that question. So, apologize for that. How is your religious life as a couple? So, yeah, it's good, honestly. I think going to mass together, going to confession together, obviously not at the same time, but being in line together, all of that stuff is so important and important for couples to do. I feel really bad when I hear from friends or I've heard from followers and things like, "Oh, I go to confession, I do all this stuff, but like my husband or my wife, like they don't do it. They don't go to church with me. They're falling away." And it's like, obviously, you have to you have to pray for them and you have to do penance and stuff for your spouse, but it is very hard. So I'm very thankful that I do have a future husband who is very devout in his faith and very strong, and we can build each other up during difficult times. A lot of people are like, "Oh, well, what if I want to, marry someone who's of a different faith and stuff?" And I'm like, "Sweetie, it's not going to work. You both have to want this. You both have to be equally yoked." And marriage is already very difficult. You don't have to make it any more difficult by marrying somebody of a different faith. And so that's why I'm so thankful for Max, because he truly is Catholic. He makes me a better person. He prays with me. He drives us to church some Sundays if I get over there early enough and we go together. He keeps me accountable for things. And that's what we really want in partners. We want someone who's going to get us to heaven, not just somebody who's going to uh keep us comfortable, and your spouse should be a safe person, but they shouldn't make you feel comfortable being lukewarm or comfortable living in sin. They should be trying to constantly help you get to heaven, and that is so important. And that's something I lacked in so many relationships until this one, and that's what really made Max stand out, was the fact that it wasn't he wasn't just telling me yes to everything. He was willing to tell me no to stuff. And that was interesting to me because usually I'm just like, "Oh, what? You told me no." Like, "Oh, man." But you know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but you don't always have to tell a woman yes in order to make her happy. Sometimes telling a woman no is actually one of the best ways to make her happy because giving her every single thing she wants is not good. And so for me, having someone who's very strong in his faith, who's a very, very good leader, not just a good leader, but a good singer too. I mean, having that is just really, really helpful for me. And he supported me in so many different ways. And we've had such a deep connection that I have never had that with anybody else on the level that I do with Max. And that's something that, I would lie to myself about in other relationships. I'm like, "Oh, it'll get better. Oh, he'll come around," and I dated a few people, and every single time I was just lying to myself thinking like, "Oh, eventually, blah blah blah." It's like, "No, if they're not in it now, they're not going to be in it later." That doesn't always mean like they're never going to be in it, but I'm not going to waste my time waiting around when they're clearly not giving me the signs that you know, I need right now. The signs of like if they're not going to mass with me, if they're dragging their feet, if they're not praying, if they lie to me all the time, etc. Like why am I waiting for them to get better? They should already be better while we're dating. I shouldn't have to be waiting around waiting for them to shape up, etc. They should already be at that point. That doesn't mean they have to be perfect in everything. It just means that I shouldn't have to wait for them to mature. I shouldn't have to wait for them, to be the man that I need. I have to go out and find the man I need. I can't just make this guy who's clearly not ready to be the guy I need and force him to be the man I need, right? And so having a man who is devout in his faith, a good leader, etc., you know, all of those reasons led me to Max, looking for people like that. And, at first, Max and I were just like really, really good friends. And then eventually, we realized like, wow, we're so compatible. Like, I actually kind of really like you. And then, over time, we really fell in love. And that's something that everybody should have, it's not just me. So, anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. I have to hop off now. I have to go start prepping dinner, but I hope you guys enjoyed. And, again, if you guys want to be on the help segment, email me and put help in the subject line. If you want to be on the segment at thereligioushippie@gmail.com. And with all that being said, guys, I will talk to you guys later.